The Green Bay Packers have been spending way too much draft capital on trying to fix a defense it hasn't fixed. So how do they fix that? It's complicated. Plus, the latest around the Aaron Rodgers rumor mill, Davante Adams and Rodgers himself playing into some of the drama. All of that tied into our latest Mock Draft Monday. All of that on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. BetterHelp online therapy is a way to keep you on track or to get you on track. You can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. So a lot of things that are interesting to me right now about what's going on in Green Bay. I want to start because I understand the appetite for Aaron Rodgers content for some people is voracious, and for some people it is like, I'm so over it, bro. And I get all sides of it. I really do. And so I wanted to talk about something that I wrote about for The Leap last week, because as I was trying to put together a mock, and look, it's the first week of February. So it can be hard to keep these things fresh and say, okay, how am I improving the way that I'm informing people when I do these mocks, and how can I find ways to really provide some insight that isn't already just like in the content machine of mock drafts. Mock drafts are terrific content because if it's a player that you really like, you go, hell yeah. And if it's a player that you're like, I would hate this player, you're reacting strongly to that. And then if it's a player you never heard of, guess what? You Google them, you watch some YouTube cut-ups, and now you've got a new player to keep an eye on, or to go, ooh, definitely not that guy. But what the Packers have done in the Brian Gutekunst era, and this goes back to the Zed Thompson era, but I studied it in the Brian Gutekunst era, is they have spent, if you look, so we've talked about this before, longtime listeners of the show know that the league uses these models for draft picks. So a draft pick is worth, you think of them like commodities or any product. The #1 draft pick is worth, let's say, $1,000. And the 30th draft pick is worth, I don't know, let's say $200. I don't know if that's the math, but I don't think it is quite the math, but it's relatively close. And if you count up all of the picks that the Packers in just the Brian Gutekunst era has used on the defense, you'd get 1,700 draft value points by the Rich Little draft chart, which is too nuanced to get into. It's not worth it. It doesn't matter. Just think of that number, 1,700. That's about the same amount of draft capital as the #1 pick is worth and the #2 pick. Put them together. That's how much. Think about how many first round picks you'd have to send if a team had the first and second pick in the draft. Think about how many firsts it would cost you to get both of those picks, like 6. Because just one, the #1 pick gets 3. And then you can probably get multiple. So like at least 5. And it just so happens that in that time, the Packers have had 5 first-round picks. They have drafted, well, they've had 5 years of first-round picks. They've had 6 first-round picks. 5 of them are defenders. Jordan Love is the only one who isn't. They have spent half of that, less than half of that, on defense, or on offense, excuse me. Half of that on offense. And so that, I think, tells us a lot about how you get to a place where you lose one guy, Davante Adams, and now your offense, because you were so reliant on Rodgers and Adams to make this offense work. And you know, I think there's a lot of wisdom in, you have a defense, like we talk about this all the time. It's not the best player available. It's the player who most impacts your team. And that includes contract, that includes positional value, that includes the role that they would play on your team, the value to your team over the life of their rookie contract, because we can't really predict or project more than 2 or 3 years into the future. These things are just too unpredictable. So I get it. Like in 2018, like pretty unimpeachable that you would trade out of that spot to get a future first and then trade back up for Jair Alexander. There maybe isn't a better Brian Gutekunst move than that one. Now we can quibble over the value of Darnell Savage. I think that was a worthy gamble when it happened. I still think there's value to be had there. And I think a full offseason, getting to play the nickel, I think could really benefit him. I thought that it really rejuvenated Darnell Savage. And I think that there's a chance that that can rehabilitate his value. But then you look beyond that, Josh Jackson, Oren Burks, that's rough. 2019, you get Rashawn Gary. That pick took a lot of heat. That's inspired work. Darnell Savage, Elton Jenkins, really good draft. Jay Sternberger. That did not work out for the Packers. And then they've taken the collar essentially on the 2020 draft because Jordan Love doesn't play. Now, maybe he'll start this year and this all changes. A.J. Dillon is your backup running back that you used a second round pick on. And then Josiah DeGuara is not even just a role player. He's like a bit player. Like if it were a play, he'd be in the chorus. If it were a band, he'd be playing the tambourine. So that's just not going to work out. You can't have a whole draft. Like I only looked at the top 100 picks because the draft is, as I say often, really only 4 rounds long, and top 100 picks, I think, gives you an idea of where you want to allocate your draft resources. And so if you're allocating those resources in specific places, it gives you an understanding, or at least us an understanding, of where you think the team needs to improve. 2021, Eric Stokes, good rookie season, didn't have a great sophomore start and then gets hurt. Josh Myers, inconsistent, did not play as well as a sophomore as he did as a rookie, I thought. And then Amari Rodgers not even on the team. So you're talking about 2 top 100 picks in 3 drafts, not even on the team. And for Amari Rodgers, it barely took a year for him not to be on the team. In 2022, Quay Walker, Davante Wyatt, we'll see. Christian Watson looks like a star. Sean Ryan, not working out great so far. Can't get on the field and is suspended. Like that's not what you want. And so when you look at the value, it's not just the resources allocated. So Pro Football Reference has this thing called approximate value, and it is what value that a player brings, and it's really just purely statistical, but it's about what are they doing when they're on the field versus off, and match. It's complicated, and it's not perfect by any means, but it's right in the name, approximate value. The Packers' defensive drafts in Brian Gutekunst's era has generated 96 points in approximate value. Okay? That's not a terrible number considering that you got Jair Alexander, considering Rashawn Gary, that number is probably a lot higher if he doesn't get hurt this season. Darnell Savage was really promising for a while. And then you have Eric Stokes gets hurt. Quay Walker's a rookie, Davante Wyatt a rookie. So maybe in 3 years, that number looks different. On the flip side, 78 points of approximate value on the offense. So despite pouring in twice as many resources to the defense, they got only a little more return on their investment. And I think we have 2 things that we can potentially conclude from this. One is maybe draft more offense, because when you do, you tend to find good players. Elton Jenkins, foundational piece of your offense. A.J. Dillon, really important cog in your offense. Christian Watson, really important piece, changed your offense last season. Now, Amari Rodgers, Jay Sternberger, not great. Sean Ryan, we'll see, long way to go. Josiah DeGuara became an integral part of this offense last season, and Jordan Love may well be your starter this season. So I think that this will all change. This could all be very different in 2 years, because you get a full season of Jordan Love. All of a sudden that AV goes way up. Christian Watson's AV is going to go way up, but you hope Eric Stokes' AV goes way up, and Quay Walker's and Davante Wyatt's. So what you can't do is be so imbalanced and then get relatively balanced outcomes, because then you're kind of just throwing money out the window. And so what happens is you have an unbalanced roster. And they've made a lot of investments on defense. It hasn't worked so far. I still think this is a very talented group. But they need to find a way to be better balanced. We're going to talk more about that in our Mock Draft Monday section coming up in just a second. Today's episode brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a way to keep you on track. It's help for whatever you need. It's not anything that you should be scared about. But if you are scared, that's okay. Give it a try. And I bet you will find an opportunity to talk to someone who wants to listen, who wants to help. It's right there in the name. And they'll give you opportunities to set goals, achieve your goals, or there are, a lot of different reasons why you might want to talk to someone. BetterHelp provides that opportunity. These therapists are trained to help you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient, secure, and accessible anywhere. You can do it 100% online if you want to. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. And the only app you need this year at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sportsbook betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. Download the FanDuel app for betting on Super Bowl 57. You can get a no-sweat first bet up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from money line to point spreads, who will score a touchdown, all that good stuff. I've got a lot of stuff that I'm excited to bet on for the Super Bowl. I'm not going to reveal all my picks, but there's a Eagles to win the first half and the game hedge that I'm thinking about doing. I don't know. Send me your favorite hedges. I have the Chiefs just to win at 4-1. Send me your favorite hedges on that. Join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Oh, the Aaron Rodgers wheel continues to spin, doesn't it? Over the weekend, started to get some momentum on the Raiders train, something we talked about last week. Sam Barrington, former Packer, tweeted out that he talked to a close friend of his who's in the know with the Raiders and that Aaron Rodgers is going to be, just said flat out, Aaron Rodgers is going to be a Raider. Rodgers said in an interview at the Pebble Beach Pro-Am on CBS that he was asked by Amanda Balionis-Renner what color you might have in your head for next season. He said, well, the word that I've been hearing from a lot of fans is the Raiders. He said outright, though, he's not going to San Francisco. Told fans that. Davante Adams has jumped in about buying a house for Aaron Rodgers, house shopping. Rodgers, where's Rodgers going? He said, my neighborhood, all that stuff. This is, again, only going to get louder. I think we have to be strongly considering what's going on with the Raiders. And I also think, and this is a little bit related to Mock Draft Monday because we're going to talk about some of the mocks here. If you're the Packers, Darren Waller is a player that you've had your eye on for a long time. He was really close to being a Packer at the deadline. He was really close to being a Packer in the Davante Adams trade. And they have the 7th overall pick. And what that does for you, the difference between 7 and say 13, just for instance, the pick that the Jets have, we're just picking random teams and numbers here. The 7th pick, you're going to have a materially different pool of players to choose from than the 13th pick. And with the quarterbacks that are likely to be selected, one might not go number 1, but a team might go up and trade to number 1. We think Houston is going to take one at number 2. There might be 3 or 4 that go in the top 10. But if even just 2 or 3 go, let's say one goes at 1, one goes at 2. Well, Jalen Carter and Will Anderson are going right after that. Then you're talking about some of these other elite level prospects. Tyree Wilson, the pass rusher from Texas Tech. There are a number of high level defenders. You could get there. There are a couple offensive tackles. Elite. I wouldn't say like generational, but front line offensive line prospects. I'm not talking about Quentin Nelson, Orlando Pace, or anything like that. But you know, there's a difference between a top 5 player and the 15th player. And it's not a small one. Like we talked about that draft chart. There is a pretty big difference between 1 and 10 and 20 and 30. Like that kind of talent. There may only be 5 true blue chip talents in any draft. If you have the 7th overall pick, you have a chance to get a true blue chip talent. And I think that for the Packers, like, you know, this is something we talked about, and we wrote about this at The Leap today with Jason. You know, what is the best situation for Aaron Rodgers? I actually think that's the Raiders. I think the best situation for him to succeed personally is in an offense with a guy he trusts to call plays. I think in that Tom Brady offense where there is a lot of defined reads, play action shots, all that cool stuff. If Rodgers buys in, that can be where he is elite once again, throwing to Davante Adams. If they keep Hunter Renfrow, all that stuff. Versus New York, where I think, you know, you go to be with your boy Nathaniel Hackett. You've got young receivers. I don't know if there's the same sort of upside, though. I think that team overall is better. I think he's more likely to have team success there. But the Packers have to do what's best for the Packers. And so if the decision ultimately is move on, and that decision is made together. And I continue to laugh at the people that are like, all these people are just speculating. Okay. Then why does everyone seem to think the same thing? Why do they keep speculating the same things? It's just interesting. The idea for Green Bay to get this elite level prospect, that has a ton of value to a team that is, if you're trading Aaron Rodgers, like it might even be worth, if they say, here's 7 Waller and a conditional, that might be worth more than 13 Corey Davis and a guaranteed first round pick in the future. Because you're getting this premium asset right now. And I think that there's a lot of benefit in that. And I want to add one more thing to this conversation. The Carolina Panthers got Frank Reich. They just got Ejiro Evero. It is a really talented defense. They have some nice pieces on offense. They have draft capital. They have money to spend. Could they get involved in an Aaron Rodgers trade? Would Aaron Rodgers, now Frank Reich does not run the Aaron Rodgers offense, but presumably Rodgers would have a lot of say there. DJ Moore is a terrific young player. Terrence Marshall, they've got some nice weapons. A really good defense, and now one of the best young defensive coaches in football in a division that is absolutely wide open. This is good for Green Bay. A team like Carolina looking around at their coaching staff and their division going, why can't we just win? Like we could win 11, 12 games next year in this crap division. And they could. That's good for Green Bay when it comes to the potential of trading Aaron Rodgers, because it means more teams to throw their hats in the ring. All right, we're going to finish up here with our mock draft. But before we do, today's episode brought to you by Blue Nile. Valentine's Day is coming up, which means romance is in the air even more than usual. I don't need to tell you. You probably had your date plans for weeks. My wife and I happen to be going on a vacation. We're going on a baby moon. It happens to be on Valentine's Day, but it's a baby moon too. So we get the 2-for-1. At Blue Nile, you can find the perfect piece of jewelry to complement life's special moments, or even create the custom engagement ring of their dreams. Simple online tools let you choose the shape of the diamond, the size, the clarity. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will help you get that handcrafted piece to your specifications. They have expert guidance and in-depth educational materials, because I wasn't an expert when I bought my wife's engagement ring. I'm still not an expert. And how would you be? Well, that's why you have Blue Nile. They're the experts. Right now, you can save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com for up to 50% off. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Subscribe to Locked On NFL and get daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories, plus in-depth analysis on the biggest games with NFL key predictions every Friday and Monday. Local insiders cover the weekend with game-to-game episodes. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. So with this idea of balance in mind, and with this idea of the Raiders in mind, I did a mock where the Packers get 7 and a future first. I'll make it conditional just for fun, but I think they're going to get this. And Darren Waller for Aaron Rodgers. Now, whether you would want the Raiders' second round pick versus the future first, I think that there's reasonable people can disagree on that. I think it depends on what you think you're going to be able to get on day 2. I think it depends on what you think of next year's draft. So there's a lot that goes into it. I really like the way that this draft turns out. And any draft that I see where the Packers have the 7th overall pick and Tyree Wilson is available, that is the guy I'm taking, the Texas Tech edge rusher. He's not a special athlete, but he's so powerful. And he can dominate. Now he has really good physical tools. Don't get me wrong. You can't be a top 10 pick as an edge rusher and not have really good physical tools. He does have that. I think he'd be a great fit. Like Rashawn Gary will run through your face. Kenny Clark will run through your face. Kingsley Enagbare will run through your face. Tyree Wilson will run through your face. Now he's got a little bit more lateral than I think some of the other guys on the Packers roster does. This is a blue chip player. Him and Rashawn Gary could be, the Bosa Armstead kind of thing, or the Joey Bosa Khalil Mack kind of thing, like premier pass rushers for the next 5+ years, or hopefully longer. That is so valuable to a defense. Now I understand we just talked about all the resources plugged into the defense. Well, part of the problem is they didn't have premium resources. When they had a premium resource in Jair Alexander, they nailed it. When they had a premium resource in Jair Alexander, they nailed it. Or in Rashawn Gary, they nailed it. So when they've had some of these high picks, they've done a really good job with them. We'll see. They big bet to move up for Christian Watson. Looks like they nailed that. At 15, I have Quentin Johnston, the receiver from TCU. I'm not going to put Jackson Smith-Njigba in here every time. He was available. Quentin Johnston is the consensus higher player. There are concerns about what JSN is going to run. I personally do not care. And I think if you have Darren Waller, like Johnston is a little redundant with some of the other guys that the Packers have. But add talent. Just add talent and figure out the fit later. At 45, Mazi Smith, my guy from Michigan. Man, I love this player. He is an MFer, man. Like I love the violence, the strength. He's on the Bruce Feldman freaks list. At 45, he's the guy that I'm looking for. And he might not make it to 45 if he blows up the combine the way that he has a chance to. He is the perfect complement in all of these 2-down fronts that the Packers want to run, where they have 2 true defensive linemen and 2 outside linebackers in some of those nickel looks. You need 2 hosses in there, and Mazi Smith is that. 78, you have to plan for the future at running back. Tank Bigsby from Auburn, almost the identical size of Aaron Jones. Is it great value at 78? I don't know. But again, I wanted to try and find some value here. And then at 116, I have Joe Tippmann, the center from Wisconsin. God, just look at the hair beard combo, unbelievable. We don't know what Josh Myers is. Is he good? Is he not? You have to take an offensive lineman, not an offensive tackle, but an offensive lineman at some point. This is where you found Zach Tom. This is where you found John Runyon. This is where you found Josh Sitton, DJ Lang, David Bakhtiari, on and on. Not that he's going to be those guys, but the Packers have found some value in this spot before. I think if Elton Jenkins, gets a chance at right tackle, you need help on the interior offensive line. If Josh Myers is not it, I don't think Jake Hansen is waiting in the wings ready to go in. So I think that you'd like to have someone in there who's played center, who knows the deal, and who can move those big bodies inside. I think Tippmann. Some people think Tippmann is the best center in the draft. So to get him there, that'd be a really good opportunity for Green Bay. All right, Super Bowl week. It's gonna be fun. Super Bowl week. I get in tomorrow, but will not be reflected in tomorrow's show because I will be traveling all day on Monday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're gonna have a lot of fun stuff. Draft players, former players, current players. Some good stuff coming up. I don't want to spoil all of it, but a player that the Packers might have a lot of interest on in the draft. So stay tuned for all of that. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, you can do that on our Locked On Packers YouTube page to stay Locked On Packers.